Only Italians would let a woman lead. But 2.1, folks, is Trump, speaking of the Orange Man, Trump declares Antifa as foreign terrorists in line with Hamas and the Taliban. Now, we were supposed to talk about this on Monday, but we ran out of time, folks. We always carry topics over for the next show so that we don't have to put so much effort into finding more topics. And the implications of this are staggering. Consider this as a scenario, folks. Scenario. Antifa have a base of operations in, I don't know, Australia. Just use Australia as an example. Now, America, like they have in most of their allied countries, America has a foreign base in Australia. So it is considered an ally and a strategic partner, especially in Asia, East Asia, and Oceania, right? So they designate Antifa as an international terrorist organization. So the Americans are well within their rights, considering they have military assets in Australia, to seek and destroy a terrorist group in that country. Now, there are other instances where the United States have utilized actions against terrorist groups. One action that is most known is drone strikes. So, because of this declaration, which will be enacted very soon, we could see potential scenarios of the United States government drone striking their allies because there are Antifa enclaves in places like Australia, places like Germany, places like the UK, because this is an international organization. There is a precedent for it when groups like Al Qaeda, for example, had bases in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iraq, Syria. They'd have strikes there. So it's not beyond the realm of possibility for this to happen and occur. I mean, if it happens in a Middle Eastern country, that's fine. But if it happens in a civilized Western country, it's like, oh no, America is attacking us. They're blowing up our buildings. Oh no, what's going on? But that could be a possibility now because Trump has made this very clear. Antifa are an internationally recognized terrorist organization in line with groups like Hamas, the Taliban, who run the government of Afghanistan, Al Qaeda, and, ISIS, to use another example. Now, Ryan is our history buff here, folks, so he probably has the most knowledge on the situation in question. What do you make of Trump not only declaring Antifa a terrorist organization, but the international implications of that?
So what that actually does is because Antifa is actually is a domestic terrorist group. It is because it's really lovely the fact that they call themselves anti-fascists. But the definition
Mm.
of terrorism, the basic definition of terrorism, is actually basically to terrorize others through threats of violence or actual violence, and to push a political ideology. That's just what terrorism is, flat out. So yes, Antifa is actually a domestic terrorist group. Does that mean that we're going to drone strike the UK or Australia? Even though maybe these countries need to have a couple people, and I kid actually, because again, I'm not actually a far leftist lunatic who celebrates people dying, but like quite frankly, these are losers who destroy other people's property in the name of social justice because we're doing it for the good of the people. Who the fuck are you? Do you think the people that you're destroying their property, maybe setting their car on fire or their business, do you think that you're doing it? Do you think that they look at you and think that you're doing it for the good of the people? Congratulations, Antifa. You're not actually anti fascist. You are the fascists because you are literally the new embodiment of the modern century, the modern world of basically being the brown shirts from World War II. Yes, that is what the a certain mustache man used to take power in Germany in the 1930s. He used brown shirts, that's what they're called, in the historical books as well. And they ran around terrorizing everybody. And like, if you didn't lockstep in line, they would beat you in the streets. They would burn your business down. They would
Mm.
assault you. They would intimidate your family. They may even hurt your family. And then one day, when they were no longer needed, because again, a good little, I don't want to say a good little soldier, because that's, an actual soldier has morals, has an actual moral compass to it, at least from my experience in the U.S. Army. A good little
Mm.
bitch does what you're told, and then you're taken out when you're no longer needed. You're knelt in the street, similar to the Jews were, by the SS, and you're disposed of. And that's what they did to the brown shirts. If you did not conform, if you were deemed a problem because you were too radical and we no longer needed you, we knelt you in the street and we took care of the problem. That's what they did in 1930s Germany. And then you had the Goose Steppen, the Sieg Heil, and all that kind of stuff. And we know where that went. And they came this close. They came this close to
Yep.
the nuclear bomb in Germany. I'm not joking,
Mm.
guys. If it was not for German scientists fleeing, knowing what was coming to the America, coming to the UK and stuff like that. America got the atomic bomb first. Germany was this close to beating us.
Oh,
The
yeah.
world would be very different.
Yeah, and people need to understand the historical context, folks. It was thanks to Norwegian heavy water, which is extremely rare even to this day, Czech industry, and Eastern European slave labor. That combined with an ultra modern military, that was one hell of a powerhouse. But the scenario example that I made, folks, was inspired by this post from Anti-Feminism Australia, making a very clear post about this situation. Breaking: Trump makes Antifa an international terrorist organization. This means that the US can now take out Antifa in other countries like Australia. And that was the foundation for the scenario I proposed. Jose, what do you make of this whole situation?
Well, I think it's also, you have to look at Antifa and who funds Antifa domestically in the United States. These people are people who go, ha ha ha, ha ha ha, you can't get me because I'm over in Davos, you can't do shit to me. Well, turns out we can. And so this is also a loop. This closes that loophole because like people like Soros can just, retreat out of this country and be like, ha ha ha, you can't get me. You can't get me because I'm no longer on American soil. I'm no longer on American jurisdiction. Klaus Schwab, all of these, lunatics. Also, you're going to have a lot of antifoids, the foot soldiers, the low men. And where are they going to try to run? They're going to try to run to Canada. They're going to try to run to Mexico to avoid now what is the law, to avoid legal capture. This prevents legal loopholes that they can use to sort of avoid coming into American custody. Moreover, these countries will not protect them because now these people will become lucrative bargaining tools to gain favor with Trump, maybe lower a tariff by a couple of percent or whatever. They want to stay on Trump's nice side. They're going to play along with this, and it makes a big problem for Antifa because there's going to be nowhere to run. If you, it's fuck around and find out. It's not just
that's the best case scenario, Jose. I mean, worst case scenario for Antifa is that they get treated the same way ISIS were treated, in that an international alliance is formed to wipe out this massive threat. Now, in ISIS's case, back during its peak, they were beating fucking everyone. They were beating the Iraqis, the Syrians, they were beating the Kurds, they were even beating the Turkish armed forces on the borders as well. And it took an alliance of the Syrian army, the Iraqi army, the Turks, the Kurds, Russia, and the United States, as well as Britain and France, to really destroy ISIS, which could have been a monumental threat if it was left unchecked. Now, will I think the Trump administration will go that far? I don't think so. But, and this is a great but, folks, they have the means to do so if they want to deal with this threat,
and
because the option is open.
You know, a lot of people don't know, by the way, also the defeat of ISIS took a lot of countries involved in it, but and this is gonna probably bother a lot of people, but shout out to Russia, because quite frankly they weren't around when it came to ISIS. They actually did more damage than any other country involved, and that's including the United States. And I love the United States. Look at my freaking hat, man.
Oh,
I'm a
yeah.
U.S. Army veteran. They did more damage to ISIS than every other country combined. And so, you know what? There's no more ISIS for a reason. And also on this front, when it comes to George Soros, he actually is Jewish. He's from a non-observant Jewish family, and he in World War II he helped the Nazis gain foothold and find other Jews. How do you think he became so rich? Because quite frankly, again, the Nazis were stealing and looting and pillaging to fund their party, and then of course the war in later times. And at the same, and on top of that as well, talking about Klaus Schwab, his father was actually a unofficial member of the Nazi Party. And I say unofficial because that's how it's quoted in a stupid article from some loser back in like 2019 or 2020. His father was a Nazi. If you're a part of the Nazi Party, you are a Nazi through and through. That's the way it is. That's the way it works. And look, I know the Allies technically won, but I look at the world today, and I do question it. Like it's like, did we actually win? Because because everything is coming full circle again, and we have kids believing this garbage, and they're 19 years old, they're 20 years old, they're 25, and they're marching in the name of Antifa, saying I'm an anti-fascist. And it's like, you're the ones being the fascists for the new world order.
It's the simple fact, ladies and gentlemen, that you can win wars and lose the peace. And I think America, the United States, I think is a fantastic example of this. The United States is a great example of we can win wars for the most part. There are a few exceptions, but we often lose the peace. And that's the thing people need to bear in mind. We do have a majority American panel. The embodiment of the American ideal, which is a good thing. Noise, what do you make of this declaration?
Well, it reminds me, there was this gathering that they didn't call themselves Antifa. They called themselves Antifida. I could see it. I'm striking up new corporations and just funneling the money over, slightly changing the name, going, no, none of us are Antifa now. You can't touch us. And then you'd have to do it all again. And I don't know if what he made included the language to say Antifa or anything Antifa related, but I could see them just sidestepping it left and right all over the place.
Well, since it was a declaration, folks, I'll just repeat that. Since it was a declaration, it leaves a broad scope for interpretation, which I think is absolutely essential. We need to understand, folks, it's called a culture war for a reason, okay? It starts off as a cultural battle, and unfortunately, hello, great to see you, great people, great family. And then I say that, and then I'm about to say this, which inevitably leads to a full-on war, because it's in the name, culture war. And we need to realize, folks, that desperate times call for desperate measures. And I know I use the extreme example of drone strikes, but if you think Antifa are a dangerous terrorist organization, so much so that they're domestic and international, then you've got to do what the United States has done to other terrorist organizations, whether successfully or in a failed way. It's like, look at the Taliban. Taliban fucking run Afghanistan. They're still regarded as a terrorist organization. In fact, the Taliban in Afghanistan are very similar to ISIS in Iraq and Syria, except no one wants to go into another fucking quagmire in Afghanistan. I mean, the fucking Russians tried it, failed. America tried it, failed. In fact, not just America, the fucking NATO as well failed. What's next? China are going to invade Afghanistan? And then they'll fail.
I'll add this, Digny. If you don't control the terror controls you. And that's the problem here. It has to be snuffed out.
No!